If you can dance a single waltz without turning yourself into a laughingstock, I will let my son marry you." The booming voice of Alistair Vanderbilt Sterling III cracked through the opulent expanse of the Temple of Dendur like a whip across bare skin. The champagne flute in his hand pointed downward at Seraphina Jones, the black woman kneeling among shards of shattered crystal. Under the golden glow of ornamental torches, the broken glass scattered around her gleamed like splintered bones. This was no ordinary gala. Tonight, the annual Sterling Foundation Gala had transformed the Temple of Dendur at the Met into a stage for the elite to flaunt their power. Ancient Egyptian Sphinx statues loomed as silent witnesses, while 300 guest politicians, finance titans, names that dominated New York's headlines, raised their glasses as if each swirl of wine contained the fate of the city itself. And at the center of it all, a black woman had been reduced to a spectacle. No one among the 300 moved. They held their breath, then laughed. It was not the laughter of relief, but the circling glee of sharks scenting blood. Seraphina bent down, her calloused hands trembling as she gathered each fragment. Every shard sliced her fingers, crimson seeping into her thin gloves. Yet her eyes did not water. They were dark, bottomless pools, like midnight lakes still, unflinching, swallowing every ounce of contempt around her. Alistair smirked. That smile, cold, entitled, was the heirloom grin of the Sterling line. Men who believed all of New York existed to be their audience. He flicked his wrist, his golden Patek flashing as if conducting the room. "Go on, waitress, or are you afraid?" "You won't have the strength to stand?" Laughter rippled. Women in gowns hid behind feathered fans, feigning shock while their eyes glittered with delight. Gentlemen in tuxedos shook their heads, glasses shimmering in their hands. There were no bystanders. They were the chorus to his cruelty. Sterling, Alistair's son, stood only steps away, his face flushed, hand tightening around his glass until his knuckles whitened. "Father, that's enough," he said. But his words fell like a pebble into an ocean, swallowed by the waves. Of laughter, Alistair did not turn. Seraphina gathered the last shard. Her fingers bled, but she didn't wipe them on her apron. Instead, she untied the apron, folded it neatly, and set it on a chair. A small gesture, but it shook the room, as though she were stripping off an invisible skin that society had forced upon her. She rose, spine straight, blood still wet on her hand. Her voice emerged, not loud, but slicing through the air like a blade of ice. "I accept." The Temple of Dendur froze, not with the heavy hush before ridicule, but with an eerie silence. Thick with unease, they had expected tears, begging. Instead, they had been handed defiance. Alistair faltered. His glacial blue eyes flickered, his smile stiffened. Then he forced a laugh, covering the crack in his armor. "Good, a fine performance. For the evening?" He waved at the orchestra. "A waltz, the slowest, saddest, you know." Strings trembled to life, every note like wax dripping into the abyss. Seraphina stepped forward. The crowd stepped back, eyes locking onto her. She did not meet them, nor Alistair, her gaze fixed on the Sphinx statue, 1,000 years old, watching. In that gaze, there was no fear, only a quiet flame, long buried beneath ashes. Her voice cut through the hall, steady and sharp, but with a condition. "If I win, you will not only honor your promise of marriage. You will publicly apologize, not for sport, but for judging a human being solely by the uniform they wear."
Oh.
Murmur erupted, glasses slipped, shattering on marble. Elias lifted his head, eyes lit with hope. Alistair paused, then burst into a laugh. "Perfect. A tragic farce. You think you can disgrace me?" Seraphina gave no answer. She let the last shard of crystal fall into a silver tray, the clang echoing like a bell, announcing battle. And in that moment, Elias saw it clearly. The woman his father tried to humiliate was rewriting the rules entirely. The music swelled. Seraphina, no longer the invisible waitress, stepped into the center of the marble floor, a lone figure standing. Against a hostile world, the first notes fell, heavy, mournful. and in her eyes the flame roared to life. The music rose, notes dripping like water onto a still lake, rippling through the deepest corners of Seraphine's memory. She closed her eyes. The world around her dissolved. No more mocking laughter, no more scornful stares, only the faint waltz and the sound of her own breath. In her mind, she was back on the stage, ablaze with light. Applause thundered like a rising tide. A crimson costume clung to her body, every muscle ignited under the glow. Each turn was a bird bursting into flame, each leap a spark tearing open the sky. Seraphina Dubois, Firebird. That was the name. Whispered the image on magazine covers, the dream of countless little girls. When she danced, the audience did not simply watch, they breathed with her. Every beat of her heart became theirs, but that light had not lasted. The curtain fell, and outside, the city rushed like a storm. A taxi sped, a red light flared, then glass shattered like a bolt of lightning. That sound still lodged in her memory, the same sound she heard tonight when the silver tray struck the floor. The acrid smell of gasoline, the iron sting of blood. Emergency lights flashing against her pale face. And the cold, the merciless cold when her legs refused to obey, when her body seemed to fall into a bottomless void. In the blinding white of a hospital room, the doctor's voice cracked like a hammer. You will walk again, but dance. Bury it. Part of her died in that instant. Seraphina Dubois shooting, star extinguished. What remained was only a shadow, self-exiled to cleaning floors and carrying trays. Not from lack of talent, but from escape, from punishment, from hiding from the light that had once consumed her whole life. For years, she moved through people like a ghost. No one remembered Seraphina Dubois. They only saw Sarah Jones, the woman. Kneeling to pick up their broken glass, tonight's music pulled her out of the abyss. But this time, when she opened her eyes, there was more than contempt in the air. A voice whispered near her ear, "Miss Dubois." Seraphina jolted. A black man stood close, dressed in a security uniform. He pretended to inspect the lights, but his eyes were fixed on her. "I was there," he murmured, voice trembling. "That night, in the back row, my daughter plastered your pictures all over her room. You were her goddess." Seraphine's heart stopped. It had been so long since anyone called her Dubois. Marquess, that was the name. When he nodded, looked at her with reverence. "Show them. Show my daughter the goddess." Never. Disappeared. In that moment, a spark ignited inside her. Someone still remembered. Someone still believed. And with just one believer, she had enough strength not to fall. But Alistair would not let the silence linger. He stepped forward, raising his glass, his voice ringing like a verdict. "And when you lose, you will crawl and scrub this entire hall with your bare hands, before all of us, before being thrown out." Laughter roared. A few clapped, entertained as though watching a circus act. Seraphina turned. Her eyes blazed. "And when I win," she declared, every word forged in steel, "you will not only apologize, you will establish the Seraphina Dubois Phoenix Scholarship Fund at Juilliard. $10 million, so that no talent is ever snuffed out by poverty again." The hall shook. Faces gaped, whispers spreading like fire. That name Seraphina Dubois again, soaring across the room. Elias Sterling froze, awe sparking. In his eyes, the woman his father tried to humiliate now stood not as a victim, but as a flame. Alistair hesitated for the briefest beat. Then he burst out laughing, forcing away the crack. 10 million. Ambitious indeed. Fine. Let's see how far your phoenix wings carry you before they burn to ash. He leaned back, eyes glinting with malice. He glanced at his wife, raising his glass in command. "Beatrice, show them what a Sterling waltz truly means." Beatrice Sterling's smile bloomed with pride. She glided to the floor, silver silk gown sweeping over marble. Every step radiated the confidence of a woman who believed noble blood alone made her every movement the standard. The music began. Beatrice spun, her steps exact, as if measured by a ruler. Each motion struck the beat perfectly, not a fraction out of place. The crowd nodded, applauded politely. But their eyes remained cold, acknowledging flawless technique, yet untouched by feeling. Beatrice's smile widened with each clap. She lifted her chin, casting Seraphina a look that said, "This is the standard. You are nothing but a cheap diversion." Seraphina stood still, her hand loosening at her side. Her body trembled, not from fear, but from an old force rising again. Her eyes shut, erasing the laughter, erasing the taunts. Only the rhythm remained. Her heart began to beat with the waltz. Within her chest, the flame surged. Tonight, from ashes, the phoenix would rise. Beatrice Sterling left the floor with a triumphant smile. Her silver gown shimmered beneath the lights like a ribbon of cold silk, yet within moments her dance was forgotten after a few polite claps. It had been precise, flawless but hollow. A golden shell with nothing inside. Alistair nodded with feigned approval, his icy gaze slicing toward Seraphina. "Your turn, Maid," he sneered, voice echoing. Seraphina stepped into the center. Every pair of eyes clung to her, waiting for a stumble, a collapse they could laugh at. Oh. She looked at no one. She stood tall, closed her eyes, and drew in a deep breath. The orchestra began again Ravel's La Valse. The opening notes were soft, dreamlike, like dawn's breath. Then the rhythm spiraled, shifting into chaos, mirroring her fate from brilliance. Through shattering darkness, into an explosion of rebirth. She bent low, fingertips brushing the floor, replaying the humiliation of her kneel moments earlier. Whispers stirred. And then, in a single breath, her body leaped upward, the first turn detonating like a spark. No one blinked. Spinchi ignited. Movement painted fire across the marble floor. Her arms carved through contempt, her legs once condemned by doctors whirled defiantly, defying physics itself. The crowd fell silent. They had expected a joke.
What?
They witnessed was poetry in flesh. Beatrice froze. Minutes ago, she had basked in the certainty that her waltz was the standard. Now it shriveled into a shadow beside the inferno burning before her. Alistair clenched his jaw, his smug smile unraveling into disbelief. Alistair Sterling could not breathe. Each spin of Seraphine's body gripped his chest.
Oh.
This was no dance. This was truth, justice, beauty, untethered from rank or name. From the corner, Marcus clutched his phone tight, tears cutting down his cheek. He was watching his daughter's goddess rise again from ash. Right before his eyes, Ravel's music surged, once gentle, now a storm. Seraphina fused every fiber of her body into the sound. She was not dancing, she was rewriting her history upon marble. Each extension was defiance. Each spin was a blade through prejudice. Each leap declared, "I live, I rise." The legs, once pronounced dead, had become wings. They did not falter, did not shake. They carved spirals so fierce the audience forgot to breathe. Then she launched into fouette turns relentless spins demanding impossible strength and balance. Faster, fiercer, grinding every jeer and sneer into dust. None dared laugh. The hall stood captive, the only sound her heels cracking against. Stone reverberating in their chests like war drums. The music reached its breaking storm. Seraphina whipped into a final turn, then froze in a stance of defiance. One arm raised, chin lifted, chest heaving. She did not bow. She did not yield. She stood as a queen. Her eyes did not seek Alistair nor the crowd. She gazed upward at the soaring glass dome where the New York night glittered with stars, as if conversing with destiny itself, needing no witness. Silence fell. 3 seconds. 5, 10. No one moved. It was not confusion. It was sacred silence. A hush born of miracle. Hey, then brava. A shout burst from the front row where a veteran art critic shot to his feet. That cry struck like fire to tinder. The room erupted. Applause thundered like storms, cheers and whistles, tears streaming down faces hardened by years of cynicism. They were not applauding a maid who danced well. They were applauding an artist reborn from death. They were applauding a human who had turned humiliation into triumph, insult into miracle. Elise's palms burned red as he clapped, tears spilling, reverence blazing in his eyes. No longer torn between family and conscience, only devotion remained for the woman before him. Alistair stood stricken. He wanted to laugh, to mock, but his throat locked. His power, his decades of arrogance, were crushed under the turns of the woman he had deemed invisible. Beatrice lowered her face, lips trembling. She knew her performance would be erased, drowned in this ocean of applause. Marcus lowered his phone, vision blurred with tears, whispered as if to his daughter at home, "Do you see? The goddess has returned." The music ceased. The ovation roared on, unwilling to end. Yet Seraphina remained unmoving, her posture unbroken, breath ragged, eyes ablaze. She had not simply danced. She had made an entire room bow to her fire. Tonight no one would remember Beatrice. No one would remember Alistair. They would remember only one name, Seraphina Dubois. The sacred silence lasted barely 10 seconds before the applause erupted again. It was no longer simple praise. It was a storm. Shoes hammered the marble. Whistles shrieked. Shouts ricocheted off the soaring glass dome. The most powerful people. In New York, men and women, accustomed to the cold spectacles of wealth, now trembled before the force of an unbroken soul. Seraphina remained still, breath heavy, eyes blazing. She did not bow. She did not need to. Every person in the hall was already kneeling within their hearts, even if their bodies stood tall. Alistair Vanderbilt Sterling III was paralyzed, sneer on his lips strangled into silence. His hand shook against his glass, crystal clinking against silver. For one fleeting instant, he was no longer the emblem of old money, but an old man exposed in failure before the world. A voice cut through the thunder of clapping. "Ladies and gentlemen," Marcus. He stepped forward, security uniform still. Dusted, but his voice carried across the hall through the orchestra's microphone. In his hand, he raised a glowing phone. "You've just witnessed a miracle. But this is no servant, no nameless shadow. It's Seraphina Dubois, Firebird." The room exploded again, but this time in gasps and frantic whispers. "Impossible. I thought she was dead. It's a shooting star from years ago. It's her. It's that name buried for a decade. Now soared like a gale through the hall, stronger than any symphony." Alistair blanched. He looked around and saw. The eyes of his allies had shifted, not admiration now, but contempt, ridicule. Their calculations were quick. If Seraphina was Dubois, then he had just humiliated a national treasure, a cultural icon. Seraphina stepped forward. The crowd parted instinctively, clearing her path. Her heels struck the stone in a steady rhythm, like the drums of judgment. She stopped before Alistair. He struggled to keep upright, shoulders trembling. "Mr. Sterling," her voice low, cold, resonating through the suffocating silence, "we have an agreement." Alistair stammered it. "It was only a jest." "Your jest is over." Marcus tapped his phone. Alistair's own voice rang through the hall, clear, inescapable. "If you can dance a waltz without turning yourself into a fool, I'll let my son marry you. And when you lose, you will scrub this entire hall with your bare hands." Each word landed like a hammer blow, shattering his facade. The crowd turned, their eyes now circling him with the hunger of vultures around the wounded. Elias Sterling moved without hesitation, stepped forward, placing himself between his father and Seraphina. "Father," his voice rang steady, "this woman you mocked before the entire city, she is no fool. She is the truth. She is the flame I will honor. For the rest of my life." Elias dropped to one knee, touching the marble. The hall froze. "Miss Dubois," Elias lifted his gaze, eyes shining. "My father made a proposal born of cruelty and arrogance. Let me replace his words with respect, with reverence. Will you honor me by accepting my hand in marriage?" The room detonated. Not applause now, but shouts of disbelief, cameras flashing like lightning. Alistair staggered as though the floor had collapsed beneath him. "You? What have you done, Elias? You betray the family?" Elias met his father's eyes. "No, Father. I am refusing the rotten legacy you chained me to. Choose truth." Alistair's face twisted, eyes burning red, but behind them was no power, only loneliness. The laughter caught in his throat, sputtered, and died. Beatrice rushed to him, clutching his arm but not to defend. Her face flamed with shame as she dragged him away from the stares of scorn. They did not walk proudly. They fled. Seraphina looked down at Elias, still kneeling. The hall held its breath. But her smile was not one of triumph, it was one of release. She placed a hand gently on his shoulder, helping him rise. "Stand, Elias," her voice warm yet firm. "True justice is not a forced marriage. It is building something good from the ashes." The hall was silent, her words echoing, then settling into the truth that none could deny. Marcus's eyes brimmed as he nodded. Elias bowed his head, his gaze alight with reverence. And Seraphina no longer the invisible servant now, stood at the center of an entire world, as Alistair and Beatrice vanished into the shadows. Only thunderous applause remained, and every eye fixed on Seraphina. She was no longer judged. She was the one who defined justice in that hall. Tonight the scales had been reversed. The applause rolled on, refusing to fade. But Seraphina did not bask in the glow. She turned, facing 300 faces gazing at her with reverence, awe, even worship. Tonight, she said not loud, but each word dropped like a hammer. "Breaking the walls of prejudice, Mr. Sterling tried to remind me of my place. He was right. My place is not kneeling on the floor gathering shards. My place is here." She spread her arms, pointing to the very marble floor where she had burned away humiliation. Then up toward the glass dome where the New York night glittered. The worth of a person is not in their bloodline, it's not in their bank account, and certainly not in the uniform they wear. It is defined by the talent they nurture, the kindness they give, and the dignity they will never let anyone take. The air grew heavy, molten. Each listener felt stripped of their gilded shells. Elias stepped to her side, eyes alight. Seraphina turned, her voice softening. "I do not need a husband. But the Phoenix Scholarship needs a founding patron. Someone who believes art can heal, that talent must be fostered, that a second chance is the right of every soul." Elias pressed his hand to his chest. "It would be the greatest honor of my life." He extended his hand, not as a suitor, but as a partner. Seraphina clasped it. Their handshake before the hall was not an affair of romance, but a covenant for another future. The old Sterling legacy cleansed. Seraphine's new legacy, radiant and unbowed. Marcus slipped quietly from the corner, wiping his tears as he sent the video to his daughter. A simple message. Your goddess has returned, and the world will never forget. Seraphina gazed through the towering glass. New York stretched before her, ablaze, millions of lights bowing in salute. Inside her heart whispered, "They tried to bury me, but they did not know I was a seed." From the barren soil of contempt, a garden had begun to bloom, and in the solemn silence of history, among the ruins of ancient pharaohs, a new queen had reclaimed her crown not of gold or jewels, but of resilience. And tonight, she was ready to begin her reign. What do you think of Seraphina Dubois's journey? If it were you, would you have the courage to rise from the ashes and turn humiliation into triumph? Share your thoughts below. And if this story touched your heart, like, comment, and share to spread the message that courage and talent can shatter every prejudice. Don't forget to subscribe to Toch Story and ring the bell so you never miss a tale that stirs the soul.